This past week, the Church marked the 60th anniversary of the opening of the Second Vatican Council. It was an event of biblical epic proportions, where there were 200 to 300 bishops at the Councils of Nicaea and Trent, and just over 700 at the First Vatican Council. Nearly 3,000 bishops from 112 countries attended the Second Vatican Council, along with religious, lay, and ecumenical observers. The Council spanned two papacies, being opened by good Pope John in 1962 and closed by St. Paul VI in 1965. It produced 4 constitutions on liturgy, church, revelation, and modernity, 9 decrees on bishops, priests, religious, laity, Eastern churches, ecumenism, media, formation, and mission, and 3 declarations on non-Christians, religious freedom, and education. Marriage, of course, was bound to come up in the document on the liturgy, as it is one of the sacraments, in the one on the church, as it's one of the states of Christian life, and in the document on the lay apostolate, as it's where much of lay life happens. But where marriage received the most attention from the Council Fathers was in the Pastoral Constitution on the Church in the modern world, where the bishops said marriage had become a particularly urgent problem. Why? Well, the Council Fathers knew that the well-being of individuals and communities depends hugely on marriages and families. That's where most people find affection, support, fulfilment. It's where children are procreated and reared. When it works, it is, as the Council called it, a school of deeper humanity. And on marriage depends the continuation of the race, the development of those involved, and the peace and prosperity of society. Yet 60 years ago, it was the age of the sexual revolution and the me generation. The Council Fathers feared divorce, promiscuity, and confusion about the human person and morality were obscuring the meaning of marriage. That selfishness, hedonism, and an anti-child mentality could undermine it, and that many marriages would break under the strain of contemporary pressures. Promoting healthy marital and family life would be one of the most prophetic and useful things the Christian community could do in our age, they thought, and do not just for themselves, but for the rest of society. But the Church's interest in marriage goes beyond its sociological function. Marriage may have existed pretty well everywhere and always, but Christianity's take on it is unique. The Council documents say it's about vocation and salvation. Vocation, because it is a divine calling to an intimate, lifelong partnership, an abundant grace that enables that, and with effects on the character, identity, and destiny of the spouses. It's about salvation also, because it mirrors Christ's total, faithful, fruitful self-gift to his church, consummated on the cross. It's raised by him to the status of a sacrament. It's a place for affection and joy, but also for self-sacrifice and mutual sanctification. In making their home a domestic church, spouses both live out their faith and transmit it to the next generation. The Council spoke at what was a crossroads for civilization. For secular society was increasingly adopting a very different conception of marriage. Christians knew marriage is the kind of union of a man and a woman that most often leads to children, that it's supposed to be faithful, lifelong, fruitful, and sanctifying. And so it's a benefit for the spouses and their family, the church, and whole community. But for secular modernity, marriage is a ceremonial celebration of romance and commitment. Sexual complementarity, fidelity, longevity, and children are optional and matters for negotiation. And all that is promised is revisable. We call both things marriage, but they are chalk and cheese. And only the first can be a sacrament of Christ's relationship to the Church. At the genesis of creation, God observed that it's not good for a man to be alone. He needs a woman as his helpmate. So too, in today's Old Testament reading, we heard how old Father Moses needed the support of a family. Aaron and Hur must hold up his frail, elderly arms. On this account, marriage is about support, friendship, and so could be between any two people, or in Moses' case, even three. But with Christian faith, we realise that this story of Moses is a foretelling of Christ, with arms outstretched at the Transfiguration, and Moses and Elijah on either side. It's a premonition of Christ with arms outstretched on the cross, good and bad thieves beside him. So there's more at issue here than practical support that people can be for each other. For Moses, Aaron, and Hur, as for Adam and Eve, it's about vocation, sanctification, salvation. The first man and woman were not just to be helpmates, but to cleave to each other, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth with God's children. Though they didn't yet have the language for it, their vocation was to holiness. to found a race that, like them, would walk with God in paradise. Marriage was to be the vehicle for this holiness, as in due course would be priesthood, religious life, above all baptism for the whole range of Christians. By christening and confirmation, we are called to be missionaries and martyrs, saints for our times, and to be this together in communion through marriage and family, Christian friendship and collegiality, belonging to and attending church, above all, receiving the sacrament of communion. Committing to anyone or anything for life seems a long time in a world where we change professions, employers, cars, houses, body image, and affiliations again and again. Sticking for so long to one person might seem to be inertia, lack of imagination, cowardice even. Of course, the secular world still wants marriage, but it means something less demanding, less constricting, less sacred. Our Catholic wisdom is very different, because we know marriage is about vocation and salvation, sacrifice and sacrament, holiness and communion. It is one of the 7 ordinary ways we get caught up into the life of God, we call sacraments. It requires not inertia so much as perseverance, not willpower so much as divine grace received in prayer. Our gospel story of the widow and the unjust judge joins perseverance and prayer together. The God of our hopes and joys, griefs and anxieties wants us to knock at his door, to persist in our prayer, to keep seeking his counsel, grace, love. 60 years ago, the Second Vatican Council convened to teach us about marriage and many other things. That very year, our Diamond Jubilarians, Gladys and Wilfred Peters, convened in holy matrimony and have been teaching us by their example ever since. We pray today for all married couples, for steadfastness in loving, giving and forgiving, for large-heartedness, self-sacrifice and holiness, until they join the great wedding feast of heaven. Congratulations, Jubilarians, and those of you renewing your vows today. Thanks be to God for you.